little overcast.
How long are you getting there?
We're gonna leave sometime after the 4th of July.
Oh, nice.
Oh, okay.
That's an American holiday, Mark. Where we
Yeah. So I've heard something about it.
Yeah, man.
There's something about, didn't the British walk down from Canada and make a mess of one of your houses? That's right, the White House.
Before they surrendered.
Right.
Well, yeah. Here's a fact. Here's a history fact for you, Mark. Not that war, 1812, because that house didn't exist then, right?
Right.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
I'm Scott Rouse. I'm a body language expert and analyst, and I train law enforcement in the military in interrogation and body language.
Hey, I'm Chase Hughes. I did 20 years in the U.S. military, wrote a best-selling book on behavior reading, persuasion, influence, and now I train people in influence, behavior, and interrogation.
I'm Mark Bowden. I'm an expert in human behavior and body language. I help people all over the world to stand out, win trust, and gain credibility every time they communicate.
I'm Greg Hartley. I'm a former Army interrogator, interrogation instructor, resistance to interrogation instructor. I've written a bunch of books on body language and behavior, and I spend most of my time on Wall Street and corporate America.
Excellent. Well, this is part 2 of our analyzation of Joanne Lee's body language.
I just kept thinking, okay, this is over. It's the end of my life. He drags me or lifts me up, and he tries to put tape across my mouth. I just swing my head around, move it around, and it just goes around my neck and in my hair. He walked me towards his vehicle, and he just pulled me and grabbed me and pushed me into the back of his vehicle, which had some kind of bed in there. Once he put me in there, he went round the side of his vehicle, and well, I don't know what he was doing, but he was distracted from me. I kept shouting to him, "What have you done to Pete? Where is Pete? Is he hurt?" He told me to shut up or he'd kill me. Then it crossed my mind about being raped, that he wanted to rape me, and I asked him. And again, he just told me to shut up.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg. What do you got?
Yeah, so guys, this is one of those context things. And Mark, you've said it from the beginning. People are, when they're being questioned and it's broken up in pieces, it's difficult to read. Number one. No, great example. Look at Scott. Sometimes you'll see Scott, we're all talking and he may be wrenching his face around because he's listening to sound quality. He's running 2 tracks in his head at the same time. I see that in her. I see she's got something else going on underneath. Is it guilt because she survived? She said, I've watched a video with her where she says she believes that they were targeted so that the guy could rape her and that Pete was an accident. Maybe it's that. But the one thing that's starting to show here that's interesting is she talks about the bed. Here's a great piece of body language. That disgust, that crinkle nose is exactly what you would expect when she's talking about some kind of a bed in the back of that truck. So remember the context for talking about this thing has been edited. Also, there may be a second track playing in her head. So some of this stuff we're seeing that looks guilty as anything might actually have underlying cause.
Excellent. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I actually watched some video as well of police investigators in Australia taking her through at the location or near the location, getting her to act out what happened. And they were doing that in the present tense. They were going, what's happening now? And as she would describe it, she's flipping between this present tense and past tense. And that, I think, is confusing for us. And I think the interviewer has seen that video as well and is getting her to mirror what happened in that, let's call it a police reenactment video. So I just think we're getting confused here, or it's easy for us as a public to get confused. I think she might be getting confused by this as well. So again, I think like you, Greg, I'm starting to feel like we need to give some benefit of the doubt of all the confusion that's going on here. I, for example, I get what you're saying about the nose crinkle there, the disgust. but I would have liked to have heard more description of the bed, the sensory feeling around that. And I'm not hearing that. And again, so that gives me a bit of a red flag. But I'm not sure I should be raising that red flag, because I think she's getting confused getting this story across.
Can I add one thing right here? I think, I don't know if we're going to watch the video. There's a very short snippet of actual interrogation video when she realizes they think she did it. And her body language is spot on. You believe I did it and you should be going after him. That's body language you expect from an emphatic denial that we're not seeing in this. And that's the reason I think maybe there's two tracks running in her head. I also read that she got paid $190,000 to do this, and it was desperation. So who knows? Maybe she's worried about whether she's making them happy enough to get her money. There's certainly a second context running here.
Excellent. Chase, what'd you see?
Well, in the beginning, we see her struggle just a little bit, where she might almost add in some detail about what this guy was doing when he walked around the side of the truck, and then stop herself by saying, like, wait, I was supposed to be in the back of the truck. How would I know what he's doing? So we hear her almost correct herself here. And towards the end of this, we're starting to see that disgust look when she says bed. So I think, my opinion is that she did know that there was a bed in this truck, and it was probably actually nasty. And just knowing a little bit about it was enough to be a little bit gross for her, but spending some time in there would have evoked a little bit more of a verbose or an emotional response to the event. So some sensory detail. It smelled like raw onions, or who knows what in there. So some kind of description would have come out, I think, if it was real. But I absolutely agree with Greg and Mark. Scott?
Excellent. Yeah, here are a couple of things that bother me. It's a little bit different than what you guys got. One of the things that bother me is when she's talking, and when people are thinking, or they know they're not telling you something that they should be telling you, or they're telling you something they shouldn't be telling you. When they clear their throat, like, I look at this, see how big this nose is? This far away from being a toucan. So I understand when it comes to sinuses what it's like to be clearing your throat all the time. But when I do it, it's like, I've done it twice in the last 5 minutes. But when someone's not telling you that, when a lot of times you'll see one of the things I lean on is that little bark you'll hear that she's doing. She's going like that. So it's like it's almost, I need time to think. So it's a little, and I call them barks. It's a little bark she's doing. Another thing that bugged me was she said, I kept asking where Pete was. At this point, you've heard a shot. This guy's trying to tie you up and who knows what. And you're wondering where is he? What's going on with Pete? He's dead. At that point, you're going to assume he's dead, and you're going to go into this fight or flight thing that's unbelievable. And
It's
she's
the
going to
war story inject.
biting.
Yeah, no, that's a war story inject we talked about with Tara Reid, right? Once you've told a story and you inject, then you start to get that same, whether it's true or it's a lie, either way, you're going to have a certain amount of apprehension about delivering that new detail. And the where's Pete, you don't want to seem like you're cold and uncaring. We'll look at that later, right? You want to make it was still on your mind. I think it's part of the story issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry to interject, but something I think is a good opportunity to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I'm under the impression that when that happens, we've all talked to people in those situations, so we don't have to get graphic. But you freak out. You're biting, fighting, slinging, spitting, anything, hollering, anything you can possibly do until you can't move anymore. I don't see that on her at all.
I just kept thinking, okay, this is over. It's the end of my life. He drags me or lifts me up, and he tries to put tape across my mouth. I just swing my head around, move it around, and then it just goes around my neck and in my hair. He walked me towards his vehicle, and he just pulled me and grabbed me and pushed me into the back of his vehicle, which had some kind of bed in there. Once he put me in there, he went round the side of his vehicle and well, I don't know what he was doing, but he was distracted from me. I kept shouting to him, "What have you done to Pete? Where is Pete? Is he hurt?" He told me to shut up or he'd kill me. Then it crossed my mind about being raped, that he wanted to rape me, and I asked him. And
all right, everybody good?
Yep.
Let's move
on. Again, he just told me to shut up.
Left alone in the back of the attacker's truck, she decided to make a desperate attempt to escape.
I just thought, this is it, this is my chance, I'm going. And I just slid down the truck, down the base of the truck, jumped out and just ran into the bush.
Could you see anything?
Couldn't see anything. I tripped up a few times. I just crawled into a bush and hid. I heard his footsteps crunching the branches, and I saw the torch.
You saw the torch?
Yeah.
How close?
Very close. He came past me 3 or 4 times. Shone the torch above me in the trees.
Joanne eventually heard her attacker drive away in the camper van.
Thought he's leaving, he's going. But then I heard him come back.
In the same vehicle?
On foot.
What are your feelings at that point?
I was just thinking, is this ever going to end? That's what I thought. Thought that he's going to be so mad when he finds me. And he's really determined to find me. After a while, then I heard the vehicle drive away.
All right. The thing that bothers me here, and I know you guys probably figured this out too, when she slides out of the back of that thing and her hands are behind her back, she never talks about getting her hands in front of her. However, she says, "I crawled under that into the bush." So how are you going to crawl if you don't have your hands? You're not going to crawl. You're going to talk about that. You're going to say you walked on your knees. You're going to say something like that. But you're not going to say I crawled, because you would have rolled. You would have pushed. You guys were a seer. I've heard you tell stories, Greg, about all that stuff. You're not going to crawl when your hands are behind your back. You can bring them forward. I know you can bust zip ties and all that. We all know how to do that. But she never talks about that. That bugs the squat out of me. What do you think, Greg?
She's probably not strong enough to break zip ties. I mean, I've seen guys who can. It's probably not her. I mean, I've zip tied a lot of people in my life, and I don't remember anybody her size doing that. That's a struggle for me, in my youth. Yeah. Interesting for me, your fading facts show up here big time, Scott. The voice starts to drop off. Again, I don't know. There's a lot of evidence to say the guy did it, the guy that they have in prison. There's a lot of evidence to back up, the prosecution and that. But there's certainly a lot of body language here that if I were interviewing this woman, I would be all over it. And there can be reasons for that. We can't control the conversation, because when that fading fact started, or she slid down the side of the vehicle and she almost stopped talking, I would say, what happened there? And I would look for those opportunities. If she was raped, if something else happened and she doesn't want to talk about it, she would do that time hiding exercise, the and then I slid out, and there's all kinds of reasons that this could happen. But we would love to control this conversation and know where the edits have been made as well, Mark, to your point. There's a lot of body language here that is hard to believe when you listen and pay attention.
Yep. Awesome. Chase?
We see a lot of body language here that is not very emotional, not very consistent with somebody recalling a story. And all of us have seen this hundreds of times, at least. And we see another thing here that I thought was really interesting, how the interviewer is prompting her to remind the viewers that he says in the same vehicle, he's thinking, oh crap, she forgot to mention that, he came back on foot. I need to clarify with some kind of a question, another leading question that of course she's going to be tempted to correct the record for. So we see some of that there as well. And we're not seeing a lot of emotion. And absolutely, I identified the crawling thing as well. Granted, we're looking at a reenactment, an actress, and kind of replaying this, but getting her hands in front of her body is not that hard. I can do it with no space between my hands with handcuffs, and it's a pretty easy thing to do. I'm definitely not a contortionist. And for anybody out there, if you don't want somebody to do that, you put handcuffs on them, you handcuff them with the backs of their hands together, not facing.
I'll give you a better option, one behind and one in front, right in the middle of your groin. You don't do a lot of moving around them.
Yeah, Mark, I was going to say, is there any way you can help someone who's thinking about kidnapping somebody?
Look, it's troublesome, isn't it? And I think that's why, our tone's changed. We have these looks of kind of mystery on our face. And I'm sure, you viewing have the same going, hang on though, what happened, in the van, in the truck, in the back of that truck? If I were making that reenactment, I would want some shots of that, because that's a real hot spot of the whole thing. How does she get her hands in front? I'd want to reenact that, because there's some real drama there. I'd want to do the reenactment of her shifting down the truck as she describes, and then getting her legs over the top of that truck, and then levering her body upright so she can slip down. And we don't get any of that reenactment. So in our own minds, we go, what's the action there? And we're trying to fill it in our minds. What's the action there? Well, has this action been described? And the makers of this have gone, that's not credible. We can't see how anybody would do that. So we can't reenact that. Was it described in a credible way and they've decided to edit it out? Was it described in a credible way and they just went, well, we just won't do that bit. That's just too exciting.
Well, so ask yourself the other question. So if I'm interviewing you and you're a difficult interview and I'm not getting the story the way I need it, and then I'm difficult to deal with, does that affect your body language as you're failing to meet expectations? Guys, I'm trying to give the benefit of a doubt here, because if I were interrogating this person, I would be flagging like crazy on her. And because this is a staged thing, and you don't have to use this, but if this is a staged thing, I think there may be some of, hey, I'm too thick to get this right, and they're aggravated, and I'm not getting my $190,000. So all kinds of things could be impacting here. And I don't know how we cover that, but I'm certainly red flagging on a lot of body language like you all are, right?
Absolutely. I think we're all of us going here, there's something missing, and we don't know where to find that missing bit at the moment, but we all know there's something that's not there. Yeah. And we're all going, where is it?
Yeah. I would certainly be looking for evidence that you're lying to me based on body language.
Yeah.
Again, he just told me to shut up.
Left alone in the back of the attacker's truck, she decided to make a desperate attempt to escape.
I just thought, this is it, this is my chance, I'm going. And I just slid down the truck, down the base of the truck, jumped out and just ran into the bush.
Could you see anything?
Couldn't see anything. I tripped up a few times. I just crawled into a bush and hid. I heard his footsteps crunching the branches, and I saw the torch.
You saw the torch?
Yeah.
How close?
Very close. He came past me 3 or 4 times. Shone the torch above me in the trees.
Joanne eventually heard her attacker drive away in the camper van.
Thought he's leaving, he's going. But then I heard him come back.
In the same vehicle?
On foot.
What are your feelings at that point?
I was just thinking, is this ever going to end? That's what I thought. Thought that he's going to be so mad when he finds me. And he's really determined to find me.
Of the story just didn't seem to add up. For example, she said that her hands were tied behind her back, but the truckers who found her by this road say that they found her with her hands in front of her body. Just one of a number of inconsistencies the media focused on. What did you tell the police about the way you'd been bound?
Told them the truth.
That your hands had been tied behind your back?
Yeah.
When the truckers found you, they say your hands were in front of your body?
They were, because while I was in the bush and I heard the man drive up in the vehicle the first time, I brought them to the front of my body.
A police source at the time said this would require, and I quote, the flexibility of a contortionist.
Yeah. Well, we read that, me and Paul Falcone read that as well. A ballet dancer, a trained ballet dancer of 12 years could not possibly carry out that act. And me and Paul just performed that. We did that. Yeah.
All right, Chase, what do you think? What do you got?
One key phrase you're going to see here towards the end is performed. She didn't say we did it. We managed to do it. We performed that. And she's doing it with this man's brother, Paul, who she apparently is still very friendly with. And we see at the very beginning where she says, I told him the truth. That is very deceptive. You tell somebody the truth, then we're just going to say what I told the police. I was bound with zip ties, made them around to the front of my body. So I think there is some truth to the story. And I think the truthful part was that she had those zip ties put around her hands. So I think that was truthful.
Okay. Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, so she doesn't say I told them the truth. She said I told them the truth. Guys, if you ask me what tomorrow, if I'm in trouble for something and I tell something to the police and you ask me what I say, just the truth. Easy. Not the truth. This is awkward and pregnant because it tells us that something is not true, whether it's the whole story or not. Again, I'll go back to who knows how this whole thing unfolded. Nobody will ever know except for her and whoever did it. But there's something missing. Why did they pull over to start with? Was there something else going on? And there's been all kinds of exhaustive reasons that people have looked for, where they muling drugs, all this other stuff that they've written off. But there's just something wrong with her whole body language. I'm going to assume it's because of the story. She's just afraid she won't get her money or something. But that the truth is just the most awkward part of that interchange. I agree with you. Anybody can learn how to do just about anything and get out of those. And if it's 2 zip ties and 1 between, I can probably get out of that. My old decrepit body, but yeah.
Yeah, you take the zip ties and you bust them on your leg. You know, if they're behind you, it's tougher because you got to jump back and you got to fall on them. And that's what busts them. But that's obviously an emergency. But the quickest way, if anybody's watching this, if you're zip tied, get them, pull them apart as far as you can, and then bust them on and hit them really hard on your leg, right in that V. Hopefully that'll do it. Or right in the middle of your stomach and chest, that might bust them as well. There's several ways to do it. You just got to practice and see which one. But when you're getting zip tied, try your dangest to keep as much space between your wrists as possible. If you're getting
zip tied, don't go there, wherever that is.
Yeah.
This is an odd exception, yeah.
Some of us tell us about being zip tied when you were zip tied.
Yeah. It's something I've been trying to avoid most of my life. Look, here's what I notice here, just to kind of maybe fight her side a little bit on this. We get that shot of Bashir, the interviewer. He's now at a location, an Australian-looking location. Maybe it is the location or nearby. But now that sets him up as super credible. He's going, hang on, look, I'm actually at this location. You've never seen the interviewee at this location. and it's now revealed she's being set up in this whole documentary now to look like a liar. So now it's revealed the purpose of this documentary and this interview is to make her look questionable. Yeah, I'm not saying she's not questionable because there is a lot missing there, but also on the documentary side, we now find that their whole point is to make us question her. So we got to keep that in mind.
Excellent.
Of the story just didn't seem to add up. For example, she said that her hands were tied behind her back. But the truckers who found her by this road say that they found her with her hands in front of her body. Just one of a number of inconsistencies the media focused on. What did you tell the police about the way you'd been bound?
Told them the truth.
That your hands had been tied behind your back?
Yeah.
When the truckers found you, they say your hands were in front of your body?
They were, because while I was in the bush and I heard the man drive up in the vehicle the first time, I brought them to the front of my body.
A police source at the time said this would require, and I quote, the flexibility of a contortionist.
Yeah. Well, we read that, me and Paul Falcone read that as well. A ballet dancer, a trained ballet dancer of 12 years could not possibly carry out that act. And me and Paul just performed that. We did that. Yeah.
All right. You all ready to move on?
Mm.
Let's go.
There were other inconsistencies. Though there should have been 3 sets of footprints at the scene, no footprints other than Joanne Lee's were found. Are you aware that the police say they could only find your footprints?
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, they only found 2 of my footprints, and that was in my hiding place.
But they did find your footprints, but nobody else's?
Yeah. But in the whole crime scene, they only found 2 of my footprints, and they were when I was hidden underneath the bush. The ground wasn't something... It was branches, wasn't hard, solid ground at all.
Notwithstanding the terrain and the branches and the grass, and I understand that, how is it possible that the police are able to locate 2 of your footprints, and you're not particularly heavy, and nobody else's?
No idea.
That wasn't all. Though police found blood on the ground, no blood seems to have been found on the back of the camper van. There was no blood, and there were no particles at the back of the vehicle?
Not that I'm aware of.
But if he had been shot near the vehicle, and since the blood was on the ground, it suggests he was attacked near the vehicle, would it be reasonable to think that there might have been some blood on the back of the van?
I guess so, but I'm no expert on bullet wounds and gunshots or anything. I haven't a clue.
Okay, here's what's bugging me. Is that part where he says, would it be reasonable to think there would be blood on the back of the car or whatever? And she does a little bark, and then she waits 5 seconds, almost 5 seconds before she says anything. Then she starts talking about how she's not an expert. Who does that? That's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, she's trying to deflect, but she doesn't know how. You know, she's used to reverting back to being a little kid, back when she used to lie all the time. It looks to me like when she was a child. That right there. If nothing up to this point, if you think, well, I don't know what she's okay or not. That right there should just send off every bell and whistle you've got. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah. I mean, it's now gone past incredible. It's not credible anymore. She hasn't got a credible story. If it is absolutely true, there are only her footprints. Well, now all we can do in our mind is go, only you are there. There's nobody else there but you. And now explain yourself. Now, what you might want to do is go, it's not explainable. It's just not explainable. But let me take you through what happened. We were stopped by the side of the road. There was a gunman. Yeah, I was tied. I was put in the back of a van. My boyfriend was, I think, shot. I just don't know. You would just describe what you know and you don't know. But like you say, Scott, there's that huge gap, and her brain is now, in my mind, fighting for a credible story, and it's not producing one. And I think that's what we're seeing. And now, in terms of her credibility, she's kind of done for right now, I would suggest.
Yeah, I think you're right. Greg, what are you going to say? Something? What do you got?
Yeah, so a handful of things. I think now we're starting to see Bashir doing this. I'm starting to see a little frustration in him and leaning into her a lot more than you would expect from a friendly interview. Not because he's trying to say, hey, you're guilty, but I see something is not exactly comfortable looking right there. And she goes to what, if you shoot, you know what a dominant eye is. If you don't, one of your eyes is better at intake than the other. And she's doing something I call dominant eye restriction. Watch her left eye start to close and that right eye start to open. She's shutting him out. There's some interchange back and forth. When he starts to ask her about what's going on and why she's small and she left footprints and he didn't, this is the first time she's given a crazy amount of data. Hey, there's a bunch of branches and some other stuff on the ground, and she's looking for reasons. It feels a lot like maybe here the story is coming apart, whether it's the story that she was supposed to tell or something else. But he's looking, watch him moving his hands around and adapting. He's looking a little frustrated. So I'm starting now to think it's all tangled together. She's hard to believe with the level of detail. Whether it's true or not, she's hard to believe.
Yeah, 100%. Chase, what do you think? What do you got?
I think when we're in an interrogation, if you want to learn a great interrogation tactic right off the gate, you start interviewing somebody, you start talking to somebody about something that happened. Anger is a response of innocent and guilty people. The anger of guilty people goes away over time as they realize the futility of keeping up the facade. In this part of the interview, most of us would either A, get angry, we'd be like, I have no idea. It's not up to me to explain that. It just happened. It's a crazy thing that happened. And I'm not an investigator. You go figure it out. But she defaulted to a defense instead of defaulting to anger. And before she defaulted to defense, we see her default to a mechanism that I think she's likely used from childhood to maintain innocence in arguments, which is regression. We see her go into this regressive state. Her voice changes almost to that of a little girl. We see a little more innocent communication. The tone shifts, it becomes a little bit softer. The eyes are a little bit softer when she's making eye contact. So she defaults to a defense mechanism. He asks a secondary question. She says, that's not working. I need to explain everything to make sure somebody believes it. I from a truth percentage out of this whole thing, I'd give it maybe probably less than 10%.
Yeah, there's a quick note, and sorry, I'm stepping in a lot more than I usually do, but this one's a weird one. This one, maybe she has an authority issue, because when people have authority issues, if you ask me why cheese is yellow, I'd say, hell, I don't know, but it is. It's just the way I would respond to you, because authority doesn't impress me. It may be that she is so impressed that this guy is what he is and has some kind of control that she goes into that regression because it's worked for her in the past, and when it doesn't, then she changes. Because we always, cool thing about what we do, you all know, is we're trying to figure out why somebody's doing all this. We immediately jump to, it doesn't look credible, and then we control the conversation to get to the next step. Unfortunately, we don't get to control it here.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, to that authority piece, Greg, it may be important to know the authority here that Bashir has. I think this is probably post him doing the Diana interview and the Michael Jackson interview. There is, I think at this point, there is no bigger interviewer out there in terms of hard investigation he's a formidable figure to have an interview with.
Yeah, and then when we talk about authority, there's something called white coat syndrome, where people will automatically start becoming obedient around doctors. We're more likely to believe something a doctor tells us. And not only does she have this guy, he's wearing a powerful suit, and she's a girl who travels thousands of miles in a van. And he's wearing a suit. There's lights around the room. The cameras are authoritative. The camera crew that's surrounding both of them are authoritative. There's probably a guy over there holding a boom mic that adds to the authority. So the whole entire situation is a carefully crafted thing to make sure that the interviewer has some authority there. So when he asks a question, he's less likely to get an anger response.
Excellent. All right.
There were other inconsistencies. Though there should have been 3 sets of footprints at the scene, no footprints other than Joanne Lee's were found. Are you aware that the police say they could only find your footprints?
Yeah. As far as I'm aware, they only found 2 of my footprints, and that was in my hiding place.
But they did find your footprints, but nobody else's?
Yeah. But in the whole crime scene, they only found 2 of my footprints, and they were when I was hidden underneath the bush. The ground wasn't something, it was branches, wasn't hard, solid ground at all.
Notwithstanding the terrain and the branches and the grass, and I understand that, how is it possible that the police are able to locate 2 of your footprints, and you're not particularly heavy, and nobody else's?
No idea.
That wasn't all. Though police found blood on the ground, no blood seems to have been found on the back of the camper van. There was no blood, and there were no particles at the back of the vehicle.
Not that I'm aware of.
But if he had been shot near the vehicle, and since the blood was on the ground, it suggests he was attacked near the vehicle. Would it be reasonable to think that there might have been some blood on the back of the van?
I guess so, but I'm no expert on bullet wounds and gunshots or anything. I haven't a clue.
Everybody good?
Yep.
Let's move on.
I haven't a clue.
Crucially, there is one piece of evidence supporting Joanne's account of what happened. Traces of DNA from a third person are on her shirt. There was some DNA on your clothing. Was that blood?
Yeah. His blood.
How did the attacker's blood come to be on your clothing?
I don't know for sure. Could be when I was kicking out at him.
Did you see any blood at all on his body?
None whatsoever.
And yet his blood comes to be on your clothing?
Yeah.
Again, that seems to be a mystery. There is no weapon. There is no gun. There's no body. The attacker's footprints are not found, but yours are. There's Peter's blood on the ground. So some people say the person who murdered Peter was Joanne. What do you say to that?
It's totally untrue.
A question that everybody would want me to ask you.
Okay.
Everybody would want me to ask you this question for the avoidance of any doubt. And I ask you, did you kill Peter Falcone?
No.
Have you any idea who did?
No.
This is so, so what I'll do is I'll leave the second one for everybody else. But the first part where he says, some people would say it looks like Joanne did. And she said, it's totally untrue. Chase, if I said to you, hey man, everybody's saying you killed this dude, what's up with that? You wouldn't say it's totally untrue. You say, hey man, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. You've seen him jump up, get all mad. That's one of the ways you get them mad, to get to see what's really up in there, what's up under the hood. And she just, it's totally untrue. Chase, what do you got as far as that goes?
Well, throughout the whole interview, I think there's some Xanax or or something that's going on here. And I think that adds to the idiosyncratic nature of the behavior that we're seeing. And it also adds to the relaxed muscles in the face. Throughout the interview, she is doing a lot of weird behaviors, but here she knows the question's coming. You can hear her trying to get it out of him, to get it over with. She's going, trying to get him to just cough up the question as fast as possible so she can get to her answer. And this is something that's pre-prepared. And if you're innocent, it would also be pre-prepared. So anybody watching, that does not make anybody a liar. If you're an innocent person going for an interview, you're going to prepare in advance as well. You're not going to say, well, I'm innocent, I don't need to rehearse anything. No, you're going to pick out your clothing. You're going to go get a nice suit or put on a tie, just like anybody else. But in the beginning, you can see this anticipatory response to where she goes through a little bit of regression at the beginning. So she touches back on this, and then she gets to this point of, well, I don't care what you think. That's just, those are the facts, and they stand on their own. And she gets that, she's starting to come into this mentality here, and we see that. There's a whole lot here. I'm gonna let you guys take it from here.
Greg, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm just going to tell you watching, if you are being questioned and you laugh when I ask you if you killed somebody, you're in trouble. That is not good body language. Regardless of whether it's true or not, you're going to get a hell of a lot of attention following that. I'm going to dig and dig and dig, and I'm going to know everything you had for lunch for the past 6 months, because there's some body language that is incriminating. That also should tell you, if you commit a crime or if you don't and you're arrested, get an attorney. Don't talk to us casually. What we do is like a glue board. Every time you touch it, you get more and more entangled. So for me, yes, I agree with you, Chase. She probably prepared and she was nervous, and that nervous release is a threshold. She passed the threshold and she's done. She feels like, well, the hardest part of this is over. But it sure makes you look guilty as hell. You need to know that when you have that nervous laugh around a very hard question, it's incriminating. And every one of us would dig into you really hard over that.
Yep. Mark?
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with Chase here. I think we're seeing an antihistamine, maybe a Valium. There's something a little bit drowsy about her, and I think we're seeing that in the eyelids. There's often some slow closing of the eyelids. They don't go the whole way. So I'm wondering whether she's fully there. TV does have a history of getting people on and making sure that they had a good time at the hotel the night before, and making sure that they have everything they need in order to have a good night's sleep, and people can come to the studio a little bit drowsy the next day, and to be honest, that can be a little bit purposely done in some of situations. But Greg, you're absolutely right. We are not expecting that she would create that laughter. I think you're right. She's revving up to this question. Bashir creeps it up on her. He talks about it in terms of Joanne, and then like she's not in the room, and yes, she's absolutely going, come on, give me the question, give me the question that you said you were going to give me, okay? And then he says, did you kill her? Did you kill him? Now the question for me is, are we seeing, and I think for everybody watching, are we seeing Duper's delight there, which is that moment when the psychopath might be so amused and proud of their ability to deceive that we would see this kind of half, this little half smile. It's very difficult to do. And our friend Joe Navarro, I've gone to Joe with loads and loads of what I think are examples, going, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And I rarely get it right. I don't think we're seeing Duper's delight here. I think this is a stress release laugh. I think there's a lot of pressure on her here. you know, she is not credible and she is not believable, but it is, and there is so much missing in this story. There's so much missing. So, you know, I kind of feel at the end of the day here, from my point of view, this is not a credible story. There's so much missing here. Something else has gone on. I don't know what it is. We could conjecture about that, but this is a terrible interview.
The last thing I would leave is this, guys. Who knows if she was under the influence of something when this happened and can recall pieces of it, and she has to fill in the blanks. Who knows? But this certainly is a messy story. If the four of us are looking and going, then certainly everybody in the UK who was wondering whether she was innocent or guilty had due reason, because you're instinctively reading the same things we're telling you. This looks awkward, it looks wrong, and
outside of a murder, that kind of situation, when you do see what most people are under the impression is duper's delight or duping delight, it's not even that big. It's not that large of an expression. Sometimes you'll see a situation where they're laughing because it's almost like I can't believe that's the stupidest question I've ever heard from a horrible interviewer. You know, it's just a bad question. It's like, you should be kidding me. No. So there are two, when people see a laugh, they automatically think, oh, that's bad. In this case, that's bad. You don't want to laugh like that. They laugh during that. But in some cases, when I'm not talking about murder, it's okay to have a little, if it's a bad interview or a bad interviewer. Chase, what are you going to say?
So the most recent research that's been done on this was in 1999. This was Paul Ekman. And Paul Ekman discovered 18 different types of smiles. And he specifically referred to the smile as a vehicle for all ambiguities.
Yep.
That's one of the best ways to describe it. But one of the things this research says is that women are more likely than men to laugh in order to expend some kind of anxiety or a little bit of social discomfort. More likely than men to do it. And even in jobs where you're forced to laugh or forced to not laugh, like a flight attendant is forced to smile at people coming onto the plane, a funeral director was forced to act very sober and somber throughout an experience. But women in all of those situations are more likely to default to laughter in order to let that go. So that's just one thing to note here before we come to the next clip.
Is that the end of it, guys? I thought that was
one more.
Okay. Yeah, there's one other thing when we're talking about this. Our closest cousins, when they bare their teeth and smile, people mistake chimps for smiling for happy. That's terror. And people forget that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing some elements of submissive gestures here. I think that the smile is part of it, and also we got a little flirt gesture as well earlier on as they're ramping up to that big question.
Yeah, and I love that. I learned that from Dwight Schrute in The Office.
Excellent. All right.
I haven't a clue.
Crucially, there is one piece of evidence supporting Joanne's account of what happened. Traces of DNA from a third person are on her shirt. There was some DNA on your clothing.
Mm-hmm.
Was that blood?
Yeah. His blood.
How did the attacker's blood come to be on your clothing?
I don't know for sure. Could be when I was kicking out at him.
Did you see any blood at all on his body?
None whatsoever.
And yet his blood comes to be on your clothing?
Yeah.
Again, that seems to be a mystery. There is no weapon. There is no gun. There's no body. The attacker's footprints are not found, but yours are. There's Peter's blood on the ground. So some people say the person who murdered Peter was Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to that?
It's totally untrue.
A question that everybody would want me to ask you.
Okay.
everybody would want me to ask you this question for the avoidance of any doubt. And I ask you, did you kill Peter Falcone?
No.
Have you any idea who did?
No.
All right, now let's move on to the last question.
I just keep thinking, if Pete was here, or if he was found tomorrow alive, he'd be just so mad at the treatment that I've had.
Why would he be so mad?
Because he knows the truth and I know the truth, and I guess it is hard for people to believe. But that's how it happened.
Can you tell me what Peter was like as a person?
It's really difficult to talk about Pete. Before I start crying, he's the nicest person I've ever met.
You want to go first, Greg?
Okay. Yeah, no, for me, I'm going to cry. I mean, that's my escape, right? That's a barrier. That's an escape. That's a getaway on all of that stuff that goes with it. But it's just not believable. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Chase?
Here are a couple of things. If you listen very carefully, she says he knows the truth. What would you do if he were here today? She says he knows the truth. Present tense. And then when she says, please tell me about this guy, she said, he is the nicest person I've ever met. And there's multiple present tense references to him still here several times. And right before she says it might break down and cry, and then she says, nicest person I've ever met. And then she kind of buries her hands into her face. There's a small movement of the chin boss muscle here, which we primates use to communicate shame or grief. And even after 9/11 happened, these researchers did an amazing study out there where New Yorkers who didn't normally talk to each other would look at each other, and they're New Yorkers, but they would exchange an expression. They would look at each other and go, you'd see that chin boss come up. And they kind of renamed this for this Manhattan experiment that they did. I didn't mean to say Manhattan experiment.
I was going to say.
This New York experiment that they did. And
I'm in Oak Ridge right now, just so you know, where they designed those bombs.
But anyway, they called it the shared grief expression. So it's just two people unconsciously sharing grief between each other after the 9/11 attacks. And we see a tiny movement of this chin boss here, but if you watch her face closely, we're not seeing a lot of sadness as her head is moving down towards her hands. So you can do it right here in this video. When Scott plays the video for you, you can drag that hit the gear icon that's down here somewhere on the bottom of your screen, and you can set the playback speed to slow. And you'll just see something that you might identify as a smile as her hands are going down into her face. And if you helped your friend cover up their death, you made hundreds of thousands of dollars from doing the deal, and now you're making another.
We lost you.
Yeah, lost you there.
Frozen.
Now we'll never know.
We're seeing your chin boss.
he was about to solve a case, and he.
Well,
dang.
While we're waiting for him, the one thing that you don't see that you expect to see, I didn't go into any of that, but downright eye movement for emotional response, all the tightening of the muscles, the grief muscle, all that's missing, and that's candidly the reason I don't believe it. Oh, forget that part. That's overacting. The dime store acting. It's the other pieces I'm looking for, and you can use that, Scott, if it makes sense while we're waiting for Jess.
Yeah. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, so he's back. Good to see you.
We were hanging on your words.
Yeah, we thought you were about to solve the cold case. And then,
Yeah.
Where did I get lost?
You were saying if you're about to make 190,000.
Yeah. You want me to start there, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, finish it off.
Perfect.
If you're about to make another $190,000 and someone asks you,
I think she's got your number and she's blocked.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a conspiracy going on. We're never going to get this piece of information. It's like going into an interview where the person goes, look, to get this job, there is just one thing you need to know, and that's okay,
right.
Go.
am I here?
You're
You
here
are now.
It won't last long. She's got your number.
Okay, it says my internet connection is unstable. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
So if you're about to make $190,000 and somebody asks you to tell them about this person, and you do still know them and maybe they're still here, the smile might be a great explanation for what you see.
Excellent. Mark?
Okay, so I've spent some time with some really good actors and some really bad ones. Here's what happens in real life is when you get a big emotion, it just washes over you. It suddenly comes on top of you and you don't know it happened until you're in the middle of it. Here's what bad actors do. When they realize they haven't been able to reproduce that real emotion, they tend to hide from you. They tend to look away, look down. They will cover themselves, either the shame of, I'm such a bad actor that I haven't been able to produce a real emotion, or they just don't want the audience or you to see that they haven't produced it. I think she had pre-prepared that she was going to do a cry here. I think she signals that, and then she realizes, God, I'm really bad at that. And then has to hide away from us, so we don't clearly see just how bad this performance is.
Excellent. What bugs me here is where she talked when he asks her what kind of person was he, and she says he was the nicest person in the world. This is somebody she's in love with. That's supposed to be the greatest person in the world. Y'all are going to talk about your significant others as, I don't care what those dudes said. Mine is, this is the best woman in the whole wide world. I'm in love with her. She's in love with me. This is the way this happens. I don't know what happened, but yeah, she's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, and would go on and on about how wonderful we were. Not, he's the nicest guy I ever met. You would say she's the nicest girl I ever met.
She was having an affair.
Yeah.
So maybe she didn't think he was the nicest person, So yeah, I'm with you though, Scott. That's usually.
And she said it is, not was.
When you talk about someone who is, you'll notice when the mothers who kill their child or the fathers kill a child, oh, he was a good kid, or you'll hear somebody talk about their significant other as, oh, they were a good person. When it comes to that tense as they were, and they haven't even found the body yet. The bodies, the kid's missing, the wife's missing, the husband's missing. Oh, he was this kind of guy. Yeah, 2 hours in, and he's, 3 or 4 hours in, he's like, yeah, she was this and she was that. So in this case, she says he is, like he's still there. I don't know if it just freaked her out so bad it's totally, she can't handle it, which that could possibly be the case. Or she's going into it with, she wasn't there, she didn't see it, but she's sure that's what happened, but then she can't take it. So I'm with you, Chase. I think something's up with that.
But guys, the only evidence they've found, and we can do a wrap on this, but the only evidence they've found is they found blood that matched his DNA on the side of the road, and a fair amount of blood, enough that he prays not walking around without it. So if he did, then he had been planning and saving up blood or something. The guy that committed the crime that they've locked up, that we don't, we'll take it at face value, had raped a 12-year-old and her mother. I mean, he was a bad guy. There's no doubt. So on the other hand, his partner in drug dealing had a split with him and turned him in. So there's all kinds of craziness in this thing. And, you might expect that where there are no people are a little different. So who knows? But I do think there's enough body language here that I want to know more. And I wish this were us interrogating and not Bashir asking questions and editing.
Let's run around the room one time, and we'll give our, like Chase is saying, we'll give the percentage of what we think is true and the percentage of what we think is false. Chase, why don't you start off?
I think we're at about a 28.7114% truth in this interview.
All right. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I don't know what she's trying to cover up, whether it's he's not dead or she stopped for a drug deal or she just feels stressed from this interviewer, but she is not credible. I mean, at the end of the day, whatever she's hiding makes her not credible. And you know me, I'm always on the low side, so I'll give her 8.11%. How's that?
Great. Mark?
Yeah, so I'm going for about a third of it is true. There's too much missing there. It's an incredible story. She's not credible. And much of it is badly performed.
I totally agree. I'm with you. And I give her I'm going to go about 9% truth. And the rest of it is just
it's hard to believe.
Yeah, it's really tough, really tough. So, all right, gentlemen, there we go. There's another one in the can.